In Acts chapter 19, verse 23 to 41, I'm not going to read it. We've read that before. The same word that the Lord Jesus Christ used to call the name church is also used to describe the assembly that, what's that fellow's name now? The blacksmith, is it blacksmith or silversmith? The silversmith who was making the images of Diana. When you remember they started an uproar and gathered people together. That gathering, the Bible regards it as, it's called, it uses the word ecclesia, which is the same word as church, to describe that gathering. But it was a gathering instigated by a man's selfish goals. It was instigated by some professionals who wanted to protect to protect and protest concerning their profession, which they believed Paul was preaching against and getting men not to buy the image of Diana. Therefore, they were losing business. But for them to successfully do it, they had to call people out. And because these men were called out, that is actually the right word for the word translated as church, ecclesia. People who were called out from their homes to a public place. That's how the Greeks called the word church. Now, this is different from the church of God. These ones were called out for to have a raucous, a rancorous meeting, to cause a disturbance because of what they said Paul was doing. In fact, the Bible records that the people were confused. For a space of, was it 2 hours or so, people began to shout, Diana of the Ephesians, Diana of the Ephesians. For 2 solid hours, they were shouting. We would pray for how many minutes we are tired. These men were shouting for 2 solid hours, Diana of the Ephesians, Diana of the Ephesians, Diana for 2 hours. And the Bible records that there was confusion. Some people did not even know why they were shouting. Some people were shouting one thing, others were shouting another thing. There was confusion. There is no confusion in the gathering that the Lord Jesus Christ put together. Because the Bible makes it clear that God is not the author of confusion. But in everything that God does, there is order. We need to be mindful of assemblies today. Because some of these assemblies, the people gather these people together to fight their own cause. They are not there because Christ authorized the gathering and the Holy Spirit present. Therefore, it's not every assemblage or every assembly of people who claim to be born again that is called the church. In Acts chapter 19, verse 1 to 12. Again, there's no need for us to read it. We know the story very well. The 12 disciples of John the Baptist. When, what's his name now? When Paul got to Ephesus and he saw these 12 disciples. I'll just read a little bit of the portion there just to drive home some 1 or 2 points. Let me just read from verse 1. And it happened while Apollos was at Corinth that Paul, having passed through the upper regions, came to Ephesus, and finding some disciples, he said to them, Did you receive the Holy Spirit when you believed? So they said to him, We have not so much as heard whether there is a Holy Spirit. Now, what did we say the minimum gathering for a church is? 2 or 3, right? Good. These were 12. Because the Bible tells us later that there were 12 men who were gathered in. So they would form a church any day. But here they were confessing that they've never even heard what is called the Holy Spirit. But you and I would easily have said this is a church. Because they were disciples. The Bible refers to them as disciples. Even though, on further investigation, what did Paul discover? Look at verse 3. It says, And he said to them, Into what then were you baptized? So they said, Into John's baptism. So these were disciples of the teachings of John the Baptist. Not the teachings of the Lord Jesus Christ. There are many gatherings today. Their focus is not on the Lord Jesus Christ. They have teachings about angels. They have teachings about the Old Testament, Judaism, and so on and so forth. They could call themselves church. But they did not gather by the authority of the Lord Jesus Christ. And so the Holy Spirit cannot come there. And the Holy Spirit is not there. It is not the church. It was not until Paul went and taught them that what the John you are following actually spoke about Jesus Christ. The Old Testament you are following is actually talking about the coming of Christ. It's just that they didn't understand it. And so he laid hands on them, they received the Holy Spirit. From that time on, they became the church. Do you understand that? Now, it was not Paul that formed that church. Paul could have spoken himself black and blue and nothing would happen. It was not Apollos. It was the Holy Spirit who brought that church to be. Without the Holy Spirit, that's the point we're trying to make. Without the Holy Spirit, there can be no church, no matter the assemblage. In Acts chapter 10, verse 24. I'm reading these things for a reason. The Bible says Cornelius, and the following day they entered Caesarea. Now Cornelius was waiting for them and had called together his relatives and close friends. So who gathered the people on this occasion? Cornelius, right? So if we were to say who started the church in Caesarea, would we say Cornelius is the one that started the church? No. He mainly gathered men, but there was nothing about the church with those men. Right? Let's read from 34 now. Peter now came in verse 34. Then Peter opened his mouth and said, in truth, I perceive that God shows no partiality, but in every nation, whoever fears him and works righteousness is accepted by him. There was preaching, but nothing had happened. Until we get to verse 39. 44. Let's get to verse 44. We know the story, but I'm just skipping some points. While Peter was still speaking these words, note, Peter had not made an altar call. He was still preaching. The Holy Spirit fell upon all those who heard the word. And those of the circumcision who had followed Peter were astonished, as many as came with Peter, because the gift of the Holy Spirit had been poured out on the Gentiles also. For they heard them speak with tongues and magnify God. Then Peter said, can anyone forbid water that these should be baptized, who have received the Holy Spirit just as we have? And he commanded them to be baptized in the name of the Lord. Then they asked him to stay a few days. We're still going to revisit some of these things as we go along, because we need to be careful what we call church and how we make possession of the church. I will build my church. The church doesn't belong to any one of us. So like I asked the question, who started the church in Caesarea? Was it Cornelius who gathered the people? Was it Peter who came to preach the message? Was it all those people who gathered, who came with Peter, and those who were gathered there that started the church? It was the Holy Spirit. Until the Holy Spirit fell, it was just a gathering of people listening to the word of God. But the moment the Holy Spirit fell, even Peter said, who is it that can forbid baptism? And indeed, when Peter got back in Acts chapter 11, when you read Acts chapter 11, he was queried. We heard you went to the house of a Gentile. We even heard that you were going to baptize Gentiles. What are you doing? And he told them what happened. And everybody held their peace.